Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel where I challenge myself to make something I've never made before every week. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that last week I ate 9 packs of ramen. And if you haven't watched last week's video, I highly recommend it because it was probably one of my favorite videos that I've ever filmed. But anyways, for the sake of my body and my digestive system, I thought it would probably be better if I ate a little healthier this week. And who better to help me find healthier choices for food than the famous fitness YouTuber Chloe Ting. She always uploads these very aesthetic what I eat in a days, and so I thought it would be interesting to see if the food was actually good or if it just looked nice. We have a lot of food to test, so let's just get started. For breakfast, I'm making French toast. Which it was meant to be high protein French toast, but I didn't realize that the high protein part meant that I had to be using high protein bread. So unfortunately, I think this is just regular protein French toast, but I guess it could be considered a little healthier because we're using almond milk instead of regular milk. And also, I'm using blood oranges over regular oranges because the blood oranges were on sale. Which I think is good cooking advice in general, which is you should just use what you have. If you have oat milk instead of almond milk, use that. If you have dairy milk, then just use that. If you happen to have high protein bread or regular oranges, then just use that. So I cut my bread into a bunch of strips because that's what Chloe Ting had, and I'm trying to replicate her recipe as much as possible. But I don't know that practically having French toast sticks really adds anything to the recipe, so I think you should just use regular bread. And then we'll just fry the French toast. I'm using butter over the oil specified in her recipe because it just feels right for breakfast, you know? A word of caution if you're making French toast, don't let your bread soak for too long or else it'll become really hard to handle. And the texture will be a little bit weird later. But you know, what's done is done, so we'll just eat these. This is definitely a totally unnecessary step, but I'm just gonna brown the sides also because my bread's a little soggy. I did have a couple extra pieces of bread that I didn't soak for as long, and you can see that the integrity is just a lot better. I'm also going to make a matcha latte for fun. This is the first time that I'm making matcha at home, and I didn't realize, but it's actually quite an involved process. But I think the whisking part was pretty fun. Okay, so I have a bit of a story to tell here. So originally, the recipe said to use oat milk, but I wanted my matcha latte to look beautiful, like all of the nice Instagram photos that I always see. And oat milk tends to be a little bit brown. So I used almond milk, which Chloe Ting says specifically not to use. And as it turns out, I couldn't even get the layers anyways, so in terms of aesthetic Instagram picture moments, this was not it, but hopefully it'll still be delicious. There's nothing better than maple syrup and fruit on some French toast. And the French toast itself was not bad. Although I will say that one, it was a little soggy, but that's completely my fault. And two, you can kind of tell that it wasn't real milk that you used. But if you want French toast and you don't really want to use dairy, then I think this recipe is pretty good. As for the matcha latte, I thought it was a little bit watered down. But the next time I made matcha latte, I just used a little bit less milk and it turned out perfectly. So you should just adjust the ratio however you like. For lunch, I'm making an Enoki mushroom egg pancake, which I was initially really excited for because it reminded me a lot of jeon, which is this Korean pancake, but I think it's more like an omelette after looking at the recipe. Or at the very least, the dominant ingredient in this recipe is egg. So you know, maybe we're just going with this high protein theme. The batter itself is pretty simple, just mostly enoki mushroom, along with the base of the batter, which is made out of eggs and flour. I'm using this jeon mix from Otogi, and then some simple seasoning and my secret ingredient, sesame oil. After mixing it together, I wasn't convinced that it would be able to stay together when I was frying it, so I added an extra egg and an extra tablespoon of flour. In hindsight, it probably would have been okay, but better safe than sorry, I guess. Alright, so over medium heat, I'll heat up some oil and then we'll fry this. You want this pancake pretty flat so that it will cook as evenly as possible. And then we'll just cook it until it's browned. This pancake is both large and fragile, so to flip it, I'm going to put it on a plate. And then cover that plate with another plate, and then flip it. And then move it from that plate back onto the pan. It looks scary, but it's probably easier than trying to flip it with your spatula. When it's browned on this side too, it's ready to go. On a whim, I also decided to make kimchi jjigae to go with our enoki mushroom pancake. And in my opinion, you can pretty much put anything you want in kimchi jjigae as long as there's kimchi in there. But I'll link the recipe that I'm using below. The last step is to add the tofu and the green onions. I also like adding an egg in here sometimes, but I think with the enoki mushroom egg pancake, we're a little egged out for today. Alright, it's time for lunch. I decided to top my egg pancake with some sriracha, and it's pretty good. I would say that if you like enoki mushrooms, you would probably like this pancake. Because really, it just tastes like enoki mushroom and egg. So probably not the most exciting thing that you've ever eaten, but it's pretty good. Especially with some warm, comforting kimchi jjigae. So originally I was going to make a creamy mushroom orzo for dinner, but in the middle of making my cashew cream, which replaces heavy cream in a normal pasta recipe, this happened. So I think my food processor is just too big, and so it's unable to process a little bit of cashews well. So this recipe didn't quite work out. But we don't give up in this household. So instead, I'm going to make fish tacos using the fish sticks recipe from Ting, which starts with preparing the fish, and I made the mistake of getting fish with skin on it. And if you don't want to go through the torturous process of taking the skin off yourself, then I highly recommend just getting a fillet with no skin on it. But anyways, with our de-skinned fish, I'm just going to cut them into half-inch strips. And with some of the longer strips, I'm just going to cut them in half so everything cooks evenly. Now we're going to batter our fish. Now the recipe says that we should batter in the order of egg and then flour and then panko, which I was a little suspicious of because I've never heard of anyone dredging anything in that order. But I wanted to give the recipe a fair try, but it didn't really work. So I dredged the rest of the fish in the right way, which is, of course, flour, egg, and then panko. I'll put the battered fish on a lightly oiled baking sheet. Lightly spray them all with some cooking spray, and then I'll bake them for about 10 minutes. And then we'll assemble the tacos.
So I wonder and I venture, and it's safe to say that really I don't mind that. I book a flight to try to figure where my mind's at. A spot where I don't spend no money, just some time at. I mix and mingle with the people till I learn a little. I brought some weed and baby, maybe we could burn a little. She said you're funny, I said no, I'm Xavier, then I left. Sun shining, birds chirping, let me take a breath. I'm headed to the city where my chance to make it best. What people like to give a little, then you take the rest. I'm hoping one day maybe...
I maybe went a little overboard with the taco toppings, but it's all for the sake of deliciousness. I think personally the fish could have used a little more salt, but I think the batter and the flakiness came out perfectly. And I think with all of the colorful vegetables, it makes for a really light and refreshing taco. Perfect for these hot summer days. Alright, that's it for today's video. I think my overall thoughts on Chloe Ting recipes is that, I don't think you're gonna get a gourmet 5-star meal from these. But if you do want slightly healthier substitutes for foods that you're gonna already eat, then I think they're a good option. At the very least, you're not gonna be that disappointed in the taste, so I think that's a win. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. I upload a new video every Monday. Alright, I'll see you next week. Bye!